Next guest right here, she always keeps it classy. Jen Kerns joins us right now. There she is. Boom. Hi, Jen. How are you?
Hey, how are you?
So, Jen, first order of business. The other day you canceled, which I was very disappointed about. Um,
Hey,
because
we were getting a relief package pass. What am I going to
no, I
do?
hear you. The uh, the thing that I saw on the rundown that day was 12:15. Jen Kearns, my first guest. Jen, yeah. And then all of a sudden Nico says Jen had an issue at the last minute and she had to cancel. So I said, all right, I got to give her a little ribbon for a second. But then I got to welcome her back. But it's
I
good to
would
see you,
expect
my friend.
nothing less.
I see the set is still looking beautiful over there with the flag on the wall and everything.
Hey,
Jen, so what's happening? I've been trying to alternate between Corona, and trying to do little things here and there to take the conversation topics somewhere else to get people's minds off it somewhere. But I know
right.
you're really connected to this stuff, and what does this mean for campaigns going forward? Because now they're talking about mailing out votes. They're talking about extending voter periods. This is like a paradigm change for elections, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is, John. And in fact, if you look at one of the biggest and most effective campaign tactics for President Trump has been filling these sports stadiums around the country with his rallies. Prior to the coronavirus striking, you had President Trump filling stadiums of 30,000 people, 50,000 people, 80,000 people, and with overflow crowds. Well, in the coronavirus social distancing guidelines, you're not going to be able to do that anymore. And so, what you have on the left, and I'm sure this will come as no surprise to you, the left leaning physicians in this and the quote unquote experts in this are saying President Trump actually shouldn't have any more stadium rallies until late 2021, is what they're saying. And I have to tell you, as a football fan, I thoroughly enjoyed the draft last night. I'm an Oklahoma girl, so football runs in my veins. It's hard to believe a scenario in which you won't be able to have a political rally in a political stadium. Then that means you're not having a football season in a stadium with fans and the like. And so that's sort of disappointing. And it does change, at least for politics, changes the whole campaign structure. And so, what you see in the last couple of weeks is the Trump campaign actually moving their rallies, so to speak, to an online venue. And it actually makes a lot of sense. I talked with ABC News earlier this week for a story on this with Dr. Fauci and Facebook founder Mark Zuckerberg. And we discussed a whole context in which you might see campaign tactics completely change for 2020. You've got Joe Biden in his basement. We now have seen, John, in the last 2-3 weeks with the Trump campaign, they're now doing online boot camps, which I think is really brilliant. You've got people at home, captive audience, looking for things to do. We're on week 6 of the lockdown, so people have, kind of gone through their Netflix queue by this point. And the Trump campaign is actually saying, hey, if you want to learn how to campaign, and if you want to learn our messaging, and if you want to learn how to register voters and get your friends to send in their online requests, either for a mail ballot or to register to vote, come online, join our boot camp and do that. And then the Trump campaign also, I think, has been very interesting, doing a lot of women town halls online, doing a lot of women's Zoom meetings. I think that's fantastic. And it shows the ability of the Trump campaign to turn on a dime. By contrast, you have Joe Biden in his basement, not doing as well on the video chats. And certainly, I haven't seen any evidence that the DNC is doing any sort of online training, online boot camp, or online town halls at this point. So, Republican advantage at this point, for sure.
When you say you're being kind, Jen, when you say Joe isn't doing very well in this stuff, I don't see him doing anything. To be
Yeah.
quite honest with you, I don't see him doing anything. I see what appears to me is most of what he's doing is highly manufactured.
Yeah.
It's like, is he even, is he even speaking for himself? Sometimes it's really hard to tell for me.
Yeah, you know what they did once Joe became the nominee, what happened is you had all of the campaign staffers from the other presidential campaigns, including advisors to Pete Buttigieg and others, transferred over to the Biden campaign and began working for Biden. So you have this unique scenario in which you have a ton of advisors and a very weak candidate. It's kind of opposite of the Trump world, where you have a lot of advisors who've actually never run presidential campaigns, have actually never even run political campaigns out in the rest of the country. But you have a very strong candidate. President Trump knows exactly what he wants to do. He knows exactly what he wants to say. He's in command of where he wants to go and steer the ship. And it's really the opposite with Joe Biden. So the Democratic Party is almost this machine and operation without a candidate. And I think that's why you see people looking so seriously at putting maybe somebody in like an Andrew Cuomo or a Michelle Obama, who would be a stronger candidate. Boom, you could punch them in and have that match the campaign apparatus that's been set up. But if it continues to be Joe Biden, I think they're really going to lose in November.
I'm sorry, I dropped my mic. Jaden Horn was on
Mic
last week, a
drop.
couple of others. Yeah, I didn't mean to drop the mic on you like that, Jen. But, no, and others that I've had on have been talking about that it's probably not going to happen. They can't just remove Joe. Something's got to happen. Like they
Right.
can't just dump him and say he doesn't feel good or something because, so is there any possible way they could get all, because if they dump Joe for somebody like Cuomo, then you're going to have all the Bernieites coming flying out of the wings like mad saying that Bernie was the next best thing and you can't just go to some guy.
Right. And this is key, John. This is why it was so smart of Bernie Sanders to hold on to those delegates. So you notice when Bernie Sanders endorsed Joe Biden, he said, I'm going to endorse you. I'm going to give it my all and support you. But I'm going to hold on to my delegates. And I think he did that because he knew there might be a bait and switch this summer. And I have to tell you, you look at that DNC convention that was scheduled for July 13th. This does throw a fly in the ointment, because when are the Democrats going to have their convention with coronavirus raging? At this point, I think Republicans will have their convention because it's last week in August, but the DNC here has got some wiggle room, and that's going to be an opportunity to take Joe Biden out. And you're right, he can't just say, gee, gosh, I'm not feeling great. I don't think I'm up to the task. This is more than I thought I was taking on. I'm too old for this. He can't do that. But if there were to be a medical diagnosis such as dementia, Alzheimer's, something of that realm, Joe Biden could certainly step out on the grounds of his health. And it's up to Joe Biden where those delegates actually go. He could give those to another candidate. So it's interesting. There's some other details in there, a little more complicated, because the states at some point have to start printing their ballots, but that sometimes doesn't happen until about within the 90-day range of a presidential election. So it would really be up to the states at that point.
Wow. Now that I think about that, Jen,
Yeah.
they're trying to jam this mail-in voting into every bill that comes around, right? Let's suppose they hurry up and rush out there and start sending out all these ballots, mail-in ballots, right?
Right.
And then all of a sudden, Joe can't answer the bell come, summertime, August, July, or August, or September. What kind of confusion is that going to cause? What are they going to send them new ballots? They're gonna, you know what I mean? And then everyone has to come to the polls because the old ballot doesn't work. I see a million issues with jumping the gun on this thing.
Right. And I think what you're seeing here is potentially the Democrats actually wanting that sort of chaos, right? Because if they can say that there's no election integrity and that the integrity of the elections were compromised, just as they said they were by Russia last time, by the way, which allowed them to say, oh, hashtag not my president. He wasn't my guy. He's not my president. they want to do that same thing again, because I think Democrats here realize that the only way they're going to defeat Donald Trump is to rig the system, and that's by vote by mail, where the propensity to cheat is a lot higher. But guess what? The propensity to actually make errors in the counting is also higher. And that's pretty interesting. There's been some interesting studies out just in the last several days that show there are actually counting errors, because you're not feeding a ballot into a system. You actually have to count every vote by mail. Or someone at the election headquarters actually has to open that. You have to match the signature. I mean, this takes a great deal of work. You look at state like California, where I've worked, the election results in some of these races in California take 60 days to get a result. So think about this in terms of the November presidential
Wow.
election. You could actually have a Bush versus Gore type situation again, where you have a number of outstanding ballots still waiting to be counted. That would affect a presidential inauguration. So they would rain on the president's parade, literally. And then you could also have recount situations like we did in 2000, where you have registrar of voters, elections officials holding up, the mail-in ballot, finding new boxes all of a sudden 2-3 weeks later. There will be no end to the shenanigans, and there will be no end to the legal challenges that would happen in a case like that. And I think that is what we're headed toward.
Oh boy, we are going to have a lot to talk about for a long time, Jen. We had such great plans, and as they say, the best laid plans of mice and men often go awry. But we were going to get on the road. We were going to go to OK5. We were going to go to Georgia, Texas, Vegas. We're going to do all this fun stuff. And now we're locked up in our homes.
Right. Hey, Vegas might be open soon. The great thing, John, about these other states opening up, we might be locked in New Jersey and New York, but doesn't mean we can't eventually, fairly soon, start traveling to some of these other states. I'm hoping to get an antibody test later today, so I can see if I can start, moving about the country again safely. So
what happens to what happens to somebody who's in no man's land like me? I believe I had corona-like symptoms back in January. And I never, ever take a day off from work. You know what I'm saying? Like I power through. I go in with a hangover. It's really got to, I just don't take off usually. And there were a couple of days in January where I was sweating and freezing, and I was thinking, wow, I just cannot get up and get to the studio today. And I still powered it that day. And the next day, I babied myself the whole day. And overnight, I was sweating and the same thing. And I was really thinking about calling Frank and say, I can't come in today, right?
Right.
But then I kind of got past it. And then and I rested, I hydrated, right? And I kind of got past it. And then, so I never got tested. You know what I mean? So what happens with someone like me? I got to go get tested before do I get tested for the antigens or do I get tested for the COVID? What do I go for now?
Well, at this point, John, because you don't have symptoms and it's been such a long period of time, 60 to 90 days, they would not test you for coronavirus at this point. They would test you for the antibody test. I can tell you that my local urgent care center is actually offering the antibody test. How do I know this? I actually went outside for the first time in about 40 days yesterday, and I happened to see a grocery store and an urgent care across the street. And there was a huge line outside of the urgent care. And I thought, wait a minute, Cuomo said they're going to start selecting people at random out of grocery stores to start getting tested for the antibody test. And I put 2 and 2 together. I called the urgent care center and I said, are you guys testing for the antibody test? And
you got an appointment for today?
And sure enough, they are. So I'm going to go over there today and see if I can get it. But, the sad thing is, I think there's so much confusion early on that, a lot of people were in your position. I myself, I had the same exact symptoms as you did. Mine was in March, but I couldn't get an actual test for 18 days. And by the time I took the test, I received a negative, which is good. Now I have the paperwork to show, I could travel somewhere I'm negative. I, don't have it. But I want to know if I had it. So I want the antibody test to see if I'm have some immunity now.
All right. Well, Jen, thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate it. If there was any reason, but if Nico did anything wrong that caused you to cancel on us the other day, you could let me know privately.
No, no, not at all. We were deep in the throes of getting our elected officials to do the right thing, help people in America and help businesses get back to work, but not spend too much money and too much pork barrel because the bill that's going to be due at the end of this is going to be pretty hefty.
I'll tell you what, as soon as this thing is over, I'm going to go somewhere that wasn't as highly affected, that's drivable from New York. And one of the first points of interest on my list is OK5.
We're doing it, man.
All right, Jen Kerns, thank you so much. You're the best, Jen. And I'll talk to you soon. Stay well, okay?
Sounds good. You too.
Right, thanks. That's Jen Kerns. Jen Kerns is a former speechwriter for Fox News debates, and she was also the spokesperson for the California Republican Party. And she's a great friend of mine, great friend of the show.